Bekostigbare gehalte teen R269,000 BTW uitgesluit, BSMV's geld. John Deere Financial, finansiering gebou vir jou. In our previous conversations with Tebogo.
You know, entering the game industry, naturally for me being a new environment, I felt the need to seek advice. But then I realized I needed to build a factory, you know, instead of buying into different species which are not sustainable, economical units. So I've managed to then start these breeding programs that are doing very well. And I've taken a long-term view of establishing good pedigree with the breeding programs that we run here on Babirwa. And my experience has really been one. In one short story, it's management. You know?
This time, Tebogo elaborates on how he approached this new venture.
I've had to employ some of my experience in business into my game breeding and farming enterprise. I'm naturally a long-term investor in terms of my outlook to business. I invest a lot in property, so that's inherently a long-term investment. And I've also seen the game breeding industry as such, as being a long-term investment in the sense that, it's not an overnight success type of business where, one can look at it as a cash cow. I think long-term it is a good, stable cash flow business if managed correctly, as well as a sustainable business if managed correctly in the long run. My view of the future of the wildlife industry is that demand stimulation is going to be more key and relevant for the long-term sustainability of our industry, especially with regards to the foreign tourists, as well as the local people, especially the black population of our country, which, in my view, still need to be introduced into the full value chain of the wildlife industry. I mean, there's a whole population that is excluded from this industry just by way of the historical nature of our country. If we could see more black hunters and more black people, seeking more and more wildlife experiences in our country, I certainly think that will, be a positive stimulus into our industry. In addition to that, there's a latent demand of wildlife experiences by a growing international middle class in Latin America and in Asia. The developing world, as it were, more and more, if we market to them as a country, as in a united brand South Africa, where the hunters, the breeders, as well as the ecotourism players stand and speak in one voice together with our government to promote South Africa as a leading destination for wildlife and ecotourism experiences, I believe that will stimulate the necessary demand in order to fuel our industry going forward. The wildlife industry is also about conservation. And conservation is about the people and rural development. We work in rural areas with rural communities who have little or almost no access to employment opportunities. So as game farmers and investors in the wildlife industry, I think we've got a duty and a responsibility to the rural people of our country. The wildlife industry is very well predisposed to play a meaningful role in rural development by way of providing jobs to the local people in the rural areas. And the very industry of wildlife, through the live game sales as well as the hunting that takes place on our properties, is an opportunity to recycle those revenues into, community development. A substantial number of game farmers do contribute to local development. I'm aware of some of the biggest game farmers in our country that reinvest in their communities through establishing community upliftment programs. And at the end of the day, success must be defined by how we look after the poor in our communities. For if we are to define ourselves as successful as an industry, we need to demonstrate how well we look after the poor people in our communities by way of not only creating jobs for them, but also creating sustainable livelihoods.
In our last episode with Tebogo Mogashoa.
Well, as president of Wildlife Ranching South Africa, I've made it a specific objective of my term of office to build a more responsive wildlife ranching South Africa. Advocate for unity in the industry with the Hunting Federation as well as the ecotourism providers. I believe, an ungeared industry will always be limited in terms of its growth and ability to expand. Well, gearing will assist our members to realize the full potential of their farming enterprises. But there are conditions to this success. The collective leadership of government, industry, and the finance world needs to work in harmony in order to realize this ultimate goal that we see as WRSA.
Bekostigbare gehalte teen R269,000 BTW uitgesluit. BSMV's geld. John Deere Financial. Finansiering gebou vir jou.